Hi everyone! For today's video I wanted to talk about my wishlist orchids, but the thing is, it's part of the concept that I don't have them. If they're in my wish list, I don't have anything to show you for the video. So since I have a lot of plants that need repotting, I thought I would do a little bit of repotting and talk to you guys about the plants that I've been wanting from my wish list, while taking care of this chore that becomes kind of boring to do on camera if I'm not talking about anything else. So the first orchid we're going to repot today is my Encyclia mariae that I had in bloom a while ago, and she desperately needs a repot. She's all wobbly in the pot and she has a new growth, so I think this is the perfect time to kind of change her out of this old sphagnum. She hasn't been repotted, well, no, actually she was repotted last year, but it's pretty much growing out of the pot by this point. So we're going to take care of her today. And I just want to mention that the orchids that I have on my wish list are not just the 5 that I'm going to mention today. The list is too long to mention in one video, so I picked like the 5 that I'm most eager to add to my collection. So the first orchid on my wish list that I wanted to mention is the Cycnodes Wine Delight. And this might be the oldest orchid on my wish list. Because I saw it years ago when Danny first posted about it on her channel. I saw it there and I really was fascinated by that plant. I think it was the first Catasetum I ever saw, and I was fascinated by the way it grows, how it makes these really fat pseudobulbs, and it has the winter rest and then it puts out these gorgeous leaves that then fall off. I thought it was really cool. On top of that, I really like the color red. And if you think about it, there aren't that many orchids that are truly red. Most of them are just pinkish. So it made me really want that plant. We already have 2 other Catasetums. We had a project plant that was done by a Facebook group, and it was ordered from Schwarter a year or 2 from flowering, 4 or 5 years ago, and we got it. And although the plant is growing great, it never bloomed for us, so we're still waiting on that one. And more recently, for my birthday, I got the coveted Millennium Magic. So far I have 2 Catasetums already, and I really want at least one more, and that's going to be the Cycnodes Wine Delight. Pretty sure this new growth is going to produce plenty of roots soon enough, so I think it's better to cut these roots that aren't going anywhere. I mean, this one's dead, but some of them, even though they still feel somewhat firm, I'm not sure if they're gonna last too long. So I'm just gonna cut a few of them. So there ended up not being that many roots that needed cutting. So I'm gonna clean this up, pick a new pot for this plant, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I picked a pot from my collection of pots. And by the way, am I the only one who gets annoyed that this is an 8 centimeter pot and this is the next size up that you can find? It's a huge jump. Anyway, I picked this pot for it, and I ended up removing the 2 little pseudobulbs that I had in the back because this isn't going anywhere. So I picked this pot for it, and I think it's gonna work fine. I'm just gonna get rid of the old flower spikes first. This plant gave me like 1 flower a year ever since I have it. And this year it went, you know what? I think I'm gonna give you 6 flowers. 2 flower spikes, 3 flowers in each. And I'm not complaining. Okay, so I guess I can also get rid of this one. So for this plant I'm going to use mainly sphagnum moss with some small-sized orchiata bark, because this thing drinks up water like nobody's business. It's always drying out, and I'm gonna try, well, this pot might help because it's a bit taller, But I'm going to try and put a bit more sphagnum than I did last time to help it have all the drinking it needs. The next orchid on my wish list would be the Angraecum didieri. I actually had one years ago, and the plant itself, never mind the blooms, the plant itself was the cutest thing. It was tiny and it had really bumpy roots that I find really charming. So I had an Angraecum didieri years ago, and unfortunately I was still a very inexperienced grower, and I killed it one summer with overwatering, along with my aerangis that I had at the time. Well, right now I have a couple of aerangis and they seem to be doing well. I don't seem to be killing them with water this summer, so I guess it's time to try an Angraecum again. I seem to really like Angraecoid type orchids. I love the star-shaped flowers. I love that they're mostly fragrant at night. I love the white blooms and how elegant they are. So I really want to try a few more, and right now I don't have any Angraecums. And I think that the one I would love to try right now would be the didieri again. Even though I already had it, it's really cute. It's really compact, so that's always a plus. So yeah, it's going straight to my priority list to get. Another orchid on my wish list is the Phalaenopsis schilleriana. And you think with the insane amount of Phalaenopsis species I already have, I'd run out of Phalaenopsis to want. But no, there's still some Phalaenopsis that I'd love to have. And I think the reason for wanting a stuartiana is pretty self-explanatory, because if you look at the leaves, the model leaves on sorry, not stuartiana, schilleriana. I actually already have a stuartiana hybrid and I love the model leaves it also has. But I meant the schilleriana. If you look at it and see the model leaves that it has, I don't know how anyone could not want that orchid. The flowers themselves are really pretty. They have an unusual shape. Well, unusual for me because I mostly have the summer blooming Phalaenopsis species, so it is a bit unusual for me. I'm not usually a big fan of pink, but the shade of pink that schillerianas usually have I find really pleasant and nice. But mostly I love the mottled leaves and the flower shape. And they're not really easy to find. I very rarely see them for sale, and when they do, they're at a price that honestly I can't justify spending on a plant. So next time I see a schilleriana at a decent price, it's definitely gonna get bought. Okay, I think this might be done. I'm gonna put a little bit more sphagnum on top. I know some people think it's a terrible thing to do because it attracts algae and whatnot, but I find that my plants, especially the moisture-loving ones, really appreciate a top layer of sphagnum. Also, it really helps with watering because you can immediately tell if the pot is dry by having that crunchy looking sphagnum on top. So for plants that you're supposed to water when they're not quite dry, but close, like this one, that's how I watered this one, it helps because when the top layer gets crunchy, it means that inside it's like still a tiny bit moist, but really it's time to water. Oh yeah, I think this plant, I think it's gonna do great. So the next plant I have in my roster for repot is this mess over here. This is a Rossioglossum williamsianum. It's Rossioglossum. And this plant is a bit of a mess. It's been through a lot since it's been in my care. It grew very well for a while, and then I think it got some sort of pest that we had to spray it with insecticide. Yeah, the leaves are still, I think it was spider mites. I get spider mites every year. Sometimes it's not a big deal, sometimes it really damages, especially Oncidiums and Dendrobiums, not really Phalaenopsis. So it had to be sprayed with insecticide, and because it was still early spring, I guess, this was last year, and we didn't want the leaves to be wet for too long, so we put the plant outside and we forgot about it, so it got severely sunburned. to the point where I thought I was going to lose the plant. Then it started to lose roots, so I had to repot it. I put it over here. The more damaged pseudobulbs I decided to remove. As you can see, these pseudobulbs here are completely sunburned. But I felt bad throwing them away, so I plopped them in here, and they seem to have propagated well. But now this medium is getting really stinky. It seems to have lost roots again, so I'm gonna have to repot it again. I'm having a hard time keeping this plant healthy, I have to say. So now I'm gonna get rid of this gigantic pot of stinky media, maybe reduce the size of the pot because this is really unwieldy. And hopefully add these two, well, now 3 pseudobulbs back into the pot. I'm gonna do that and talk a little bit more about the orchids on my wish list. Okay, oh, this does not look good. Yeah, I don't think, I'll get rid of this. I don't think we have that many decent roots here. I'm gonna have to clean this up. Let's see the little propagation thing. I mean, it's not the worst. I made this tiny pseudobulb and now it's putting out another growth. So yeah, I think the old burned up, shriveled pseudobulbs actually are doing okay. So the next orchid on my wish list is Dendrobium harveyanum. And dendrobiums are such a varied genus, it's very easy to develop a small collection of just dendrobiums. And even so, I don't seem to have that many in my collection. And to add more dendrobiums to my collection, the one that really stands out is Dendrobium harveyanum because I love the fringe that the blooms have. And another advantage it has, it's that it's also a very compact plant. Another thing that I've noticed is that I don't seem to have a lot of yellow flowers in my collection. And for example, right now I have a lot of summer blooming Phalaenopsis flowering, and I love purple, but I'm getting a bit tired of purple because all the Violacea hybrids seem to pull purple, obviously. So I have a whole shelf of purple flowers staring at me. And even though I don't love yellow, I'm really craving a few different colors in my collection. I have other dendrobiums in my wish list, of course. But if I had to choose, I think the harveyanum would be the next one. Oh, I just hate when you're trying to pull pieces of bark out of the roots and it just damages them. It's the worst sensation. I wouldn't mind repots as much. I don't find them that boring to do, except when it's like this, when you're struggling to clean out the root system and every step you take seems to make more damage, to the point where you're wondering if you should really be doing this at all. Yeah, but this medium is really stinky, so I definitely should be doing this. Sometimes I find that it helps to spray a little bit of peroxide, not to disinfect the roots or anything. I mean, I hear it works for snails, but I don't have snails inside my house. So I think it really works to, the fizzing, I think, kind of helps the roots detach. Well, not really, I just broke this one. But theoretically, sometimes it helps the roots detach from the bark. No. Whose root is it? Oh, wow. Well, the first repot was really simple and easy, so of course this one had to be really frustrating. Oh, see? It's already making little root tapes that I have to be really careful not to damage. So, on the first division, this is what we're left with. I'm going to clean out the second one, and then maybe we can get back to talking about my wish list. So now I'm going to throw this away, go pick a pot for this plant, because I don't think any of these are going to do. I'm going to go pick up the bigger pots, and I'll be right back. I'm going to be using medium orchiata bark, small orchiata bark, and lots of sphagnum, because this is another thirsty plant. So yeah, I think this is the plan. But when I'm repotting these very unwieldy plants, or plants with several divisions, it rarely goes to plan. So let's see how this goes. So the next plant I wanted to add to my collection is the Macodes petola. And this is mostly because I've been really curious about terrestrial orchids. I don't have any terrestrial orchids in my collection right now. I mean, I have zygopetalums and I have a cymbidium, and those are arguably semi-terrestrial, but it's really not the same thing. And the reason I never added a terrestrial orchid to my collection is because until recently I was only aware of the ludisia discolor, you know, the most common type of jewel orchid, and it was never a very appealing plant to me. I don't know if it's because around here every old lady has a pot of them outside their house, usually looking really leggy and unkempt. And the plant itself, it's not that attractive to me. I don't know if it's because I find the colors kind of dull, or because the stems of them get really leggy and really unattractive. Oh, I really am doing a terrible job at this. But as I was saying, the ludisia discolor, at least the normal form, it never seemed that attractive to me. And recently I've become aware of the other jewel orchids, the other type of terrestrial orchids that people seem to be having a lot right now. And out of them, I really like the Macodes petola. It's the only one I've seen live at a store. And for those of you who haven't seen it, I can confirm that not only is the veining on the leaves really beautiful, it does kind of sparkle in the light. So I started to really want one too. I wouldn't mind having like a few others, but that's the one I'm really wanting right now. I'm not sure if it would do well in my environment, but since I'm not opposed to getting a terrarium for orchids at some point, I want to get myself a jewel orchid, see how it does by itself in my environment, and then if it doesn't grow well, I'll just get a terrarium and use it for jewel orchids and my other humidity-loving orchids. But yeah, right now, mostly I'm focusing on getting a jewel orchid to try. I mean, it could look better, but I think it's going to be okay. Tag in. And that's it. So these are the two little plants that we repotted today. One was really easy, the other not so much. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you guys enjoyed hearing about the plants that I'm planning on purchasing at some point. It was surprisingly hard to repot and talk at the same time. I was under the impression that at this point I could pretty much repot a plant in my sleep. But yeah, it was surprisingly hard to talk about one subject while trying to focus on repotting the plant. But still, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what plants you have on your wish list. If you agree with mine, if you think it's plants you'd like to have as well, if you have them, just let me know. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe the video if you enjoyed it. And I'll see you next time. Goodbye.